So if we start off asking the wrong questions, odds are, and it's quite obvious, that we're going to get the wrong answer. What do I mean by that? I mean that we're probably going to experience endless arguments and debates and a lot of undue stress and suffering. So what I'm going to do in this video is deconstruct and hopefully deprogram one of the most limiting, narrow, and rigidifying of all mental constructs. And doing this will create more space, more room for creativity, for freedom, ease, flow, and flexibility. And I'm going to do this and be as straightforward and concise as possible, and I'm going to illustrate all of the points easily, common sense, obviously, using the Tai Chi symbol, which when I reference it, hopefully I'll be able to work some eye-moving ninjutsu and get it up on the screen. If not, there's a link below the video where you can see the exact image I'm talking about as I'm going through it. So when we get to that, it will pop up. So the first thing that we need to understand, and the main mental construct that I'm talking about, is Aristotelian logic. Now, if you haven't studied philosophy or logic or anything like that, and you don't know what that means, essentially it is a logical theory, a logical construct that most of our modern reality is based on, and it's something that we were just born into. It's kind of like when you buy a computer and it comes with, Mac OS X or Windows 7, that operating system just comes on that computer. Kind of like as soon as we're born, we just get an operating system. But like I said, if we're asking the wrong questions, we might get the wrong answers. And who's to say we got the right operating system? Who's to say the operating system we have in our heads is actually going to give us the life and the results and the kind of experiences that we want? So basically, in a nutshell, Aristotelian logic says something can be A but not B, or B and not A. Now, some examples of that would be, any sort of dualistic debate, whether it's, nature versus nurture, or is it, is matter just dead material, or is it infused with spirit and consciousness? Are we a physical body and just we die and that's the end of life, or are we this otherworldly spiritual being? So from that, you can see that it creates this either-or logic, meaning it has to be all of this, or it has to be all of that, meaning it has to be either A or it has to be B. So as you can see from that, it's very rigid, because sure, it's a great logical theory that, like Newtonian physics, allows us to do a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a great, life program, it's a great mental construct for us to have. So basically it works on paper, but in reality, in physical life and in practice, it's really limiting in a rigid way to interact with reality. Hence, it creates the majority of endless arguments and debates that humans have been having for a really long time, and hence a lot of stress and suffering. And of course, if we're asking the wrong questions, then obviously we're going to get the wrong answer. Because the fact of the matter is, things can be and not be at the same time, and be neither of those things at the same time. But we'll get to that more as we go through this. First, I just want to give you a few examples of what I'm talking about in a really easy way, so you can see and clearly understand what the logical concept I'm trying to get out. So number one, the first example is, this whole idea of, spirit versus matter. The sort of New Ager and like hardcore science debate. So the rigid materialist insists that Newtonian physics is the true idea, and that matter is merely, a series of blind mechanical laws which are devoid of spirit, consciousness, and intention. Yet, the rigid spiritualist or New Ager insists that matter is merely an illusion, and the only thing that is real is spirit, or Brahman, or Atman, or consciousness, or intention, etc. But what both of these parties fail to realize is that they're really just two sides of the same coin, because they're based on the same exact assumptions about reality, meaning the mental construct or the mental operating system, which I illustrated before, the Aristotelian logic, meaning either it has to be all of this, or it has to be all of that. Yet, at the same time, they both fail to acknowledge and embrace the relative paradoxical nature of reality, which is that things can be both A and B, while at the same time being neither A or B. So if that's a mouthful or a headful, that's fine. I'm going to put it back in these terms. So matter or physical reality in the example before, can be mechanistic laws and spirit, consciousness and intention. And in reality, it can be neither of these things, since reality is much bigger and broader and more complex than any philosophical theory or scientific theory or physical theory or concept that we could ever come up with. So as you can see right there, it can be both A and B, and neither, all at the same time. So just let that sit in and soak for a minute. Because just that understanding alone will put to rest a lot of arguments and a lot of debates, meaning both views of reality are accurate in some ways, inaccurate in others, have appropriate usage in some contexts, and misappropriate usages in other contexts. So basically, sometimes in videos, people want to box things I'm saying into either of those little boxes, and for that reason, they don't understand the point. Because there's a whole way of seeing the world outside of that construct, outside of these two little poles that are always battling each other. So now let's get to the main thing which I'm going to use to illustrate this even further and even more deeply, which is, of course, the Tai Chi symbol, or the yin-yang symbol, which we've all sort of seen, but never really taken the time to digest and understand. So hopefully the image should be on here somewhere, if I was able to do it in iMovie. So while we're looking at this, we can see that on the left there's black, which is yin, with a little dot of white, which is yang, and then on the right side there's the white side, which is yang, and the little dot of black, which is yin. And then around that we can also see a black circle. So since we're seeing that, we're looking at this, we can easily see that yin is yin, obviously, but it also contains yang, which we can see. So in that way, yin is also yang. Yet we can look at yang and see that it contains yin also, with the little black dot. Thus, in that way, yang is also yin. So we can look at that and see that at the same time yin and yang are separate, while at the same time we can see that they're one and the same. And that's not like an equation or like a logical mental thing. You can look at it, and you can perceive it right there. It's right in front of all of us, and we can see it. We can see it clearly. You don't have to believe anything. You don't have to do any devotional chanting. You don't have to purify your karma. You don't have to fast. You don't have to meditate. It's right there. It's for us to see, and it's obvious. It's wide open. So we can see those two things, yin and yang, inseparable. But we can also zoom out and look at it another way and say, yeah, there is that line in the middle, and they do look kind of separate. But wait, they're actually a part of the same circle, so they're actually neither yin nor yang. They're this greater circle. So we can see that it's both yin and yang, and neither and both at the same time. Which goes back up to my original point that we were talking about earlier about the rigid materialist or the rigid spiritualist New Ager saying, oh, matter is only this or matter is only that. Actually, we can see, using this symbol and using the logic above, that it's both and it's actually neither at the same time. So when we're reading things and we're dealing with people or taking in new information, it's going to serve us all a lot better if we stop trying to rigidify things into these little boxes and make sure things fit little nice and neatly, because in reality, they don't. Maybe on paper, they do, but when we're walking through physical reality, it doesn't work. So hopefully that's been helpful. It's one of the biggest and most troubling mental constructs. So hopefully I was able to deconstruct it and help you to deprogram it and just see things from a higher, more elevated perspective. So if you have any questions or comments, post them below, and I'll talk to you soon.